Kansas State is looking to get a win to be bowl eligible, at least very close to being bowl eligible. And then on the flip side, Oklahoma State is looking for their first win in Big 12 play in how many years? It could happen in Stillwater this weekend.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into this Locked On College Crossover, Locked On Kansas State and Locked On Oklahoma State. We are bringing it to you. A battle in Stillwater this Saturday could have bowl implications for one side. Implications, not implications. What am I speaking right now? Oh my goodness. And Cody Stovall on the other side talking about maybe getting his first Big 12 win in how many years, Cody? Could it happen in Stillwater this Saturday? That's probably the biggest question we should start off with.
We are chasing the dream of 2023. That is getting a Big 12 conference W. And unfortunately, I think that not having Haas Haney evidently for this ball game is a massive ordeal. You know, he's been back at practice for a few weeks. He's been posting workouts. He's been in the locker room. He's been hyping up everybody that he'd be back for K-State. Evidently, something transpired in the last week or so. Maybe his injury isn't healing like it's supposed to. Maybe this is a business decision. But at the end of the day, the likelihood of Haas Haney playing against Kansas State is obviously very, very slim. Therefore, we got to rock with Zane Flores. Zane Flores looked better last week. Good enough to get a W. Probably not exactly likely. But Kansas State, Oklahoma State, it's always a one-score game typically, no matter who has the better team or not. So if there's a chaotic Big 12 opening for Oklahoma State, it's going to be potentially this ball game.
Yeah, and it's an early matchup, 11 o'clock Central Time. This one, ESPNU. It should be a really fun game. Either way, I think it's going to be fun. And I'll give you some stats of, although it's really easy to throw some numbers at you, Cody, that I'm sure you've heard over and over again, that you haven't won a Big 12 game since 2023. You did beat SEC Arkansas last year. You did get that one in your win, but this year hasn't been so good. You only have one win this season. It was at the beginning of the season. It was against an FCS school, and you're struggling to find your identity. Obviously, this is brand new territory for you over on Locked On Oklahoma State, basically brand new territory for Oklahoma State for the first time in about 2 decades. You fire, move on from Mike Gundy. But on the flip side, when you play Kansas State in Stillwater, the last time Kansas State has won in Stillwater is 2017. If you take that one away, they haven't won since 1999. So 2 wins in this millennium, basically, between Kansas State and Stillwater. What's your thoughts on that heading into this game?
Well, my thoughts on that are, ironically enough, I'm pretty sure Colin Klein was the individual who led that W for K-State, and Oklahoma State might be in the Colin Klein sweepstakes before Kansas State has the availability to hire him. So I do find the parallels there pretty ironic. And this is a complicated game, man. It just is. Like you talked about, Oklahoma State is looking for a win of any capacity in any way, shape, or form. Meanwhile, Kansas State is looking for bowl eligibility. And you went through the same thing Oklahoma State went through last year. Not the same thing, because you guys are actually winning ball games and potentially up for a bowl. But we had our star players returning, and we invested in Ollie in the line and Nick Martin and Colin Oliver. And we had 90% of the roster coming back and 20 returning starters, and it was an absolute catastrophic disaster. It didn't go quite that way in Manhattan, but I do feel your pain, because we had high hopes. There was much anticipation, and it fell completely flat. And unfortunately, we feel your pain there. But if anybody's going to drag you down into the mud to wallow around in pity, it's got to be us, right? It's got to be this ball game. And I don't wish that upon K-State. But we got to put a little bitty bow on this season. A win would be really nice to do so.
Yeah, I'm hoping that's next week against UCF for you, not this coming week against Kansas State. But hey, you called it. I mean, and if you want to go ahead and say old takes exposed, if you remember from our offseason conversation, we had the conversation where we said it wouldn't surprise us if we saw Kansas State and Oklahoma State in the Big 12 championship game. I mean, that's just how crazy this conference is. I don't think that's taking away anything from the actual teams. But of course, both the teams had a disappointing year again. You mentioned all the changes that happened with Oklahoma State this year, bringing in new coaches, obviously removing the coaches as well. bringing in roster retention, hopefully trying to make some changes. What exactly, if people haven't paid attention to Oklahoma State this year, what would you say, what exactly, if you had to pick one thing, went wrong with this team?
I just think Mike Gundy kind of lost control of managing everybody simultaneously. It was a good idea to bring Todd Grantham in as the head coach of the defense and let him hire his own people, do his own thing, recruit his own way. And we went helmet sticker chasing, buddy. We went and got a bunch of dudes from Florida and LSU and UCLA and Tennessee, because if they would have, achieved their potential at their previous stops, then they're like all conference individuals. But it didn't work out, man. We came together and we came up with anywhere from 11 to 14-ish $million. Seems pretty consensus. And it hasn't worked out, right? And typically whenever you have the talent, but you don't have the coaching, it creates a little bit of divide. And then you enter this NIL era. And what happens is you have players that are getting playing time, but they're not taking care of the things off the field that they're supposed to. Oh, and by the way, they're getting $20,000 to $25,000 a month. And then you got a bunch of dudes still making $6, $7, $8 grand a month that bust their tails and do everything the right way. And they try to be about the cowboy culture, but it falls on deaf ears, right? So NIL is great if it's managed correctly. I would say that Oklahoma State has failed massively in the last 3 years at management of NIL. And even when we do fully invest, like this season, because we kind of, threw it to the wolves, this is the result.
Before we get into position battles and, of course, talking about Oklahoma State's coaching search, because I think that does have a potential Kansas State relationship with that. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Does this feel like a lost season for Oklahoma State? And I don't mean that by obviously you fire a coach, you're sitting at the bottom of the conference, but like you got to be trying to get some sort of retention for next year. You got to be trying to find some sort of identity, try to understand who are the players you should keep around. Do you feel, because this is the first time in 2 decades almost that you're going in the Big 12 play where you don't have Mike Gundy as your head coach, you don't have a man who's 40, out there talking at the press conference. Does this feel like a lost season to you as someone who covers this team every single day?
It does, because I think if you look even at Colorado, what they're trying to do at the end of the season, knowing that all is lost, is they're trying to give some sales pitch to the younger guys as to why you should stay, right? So we're going to give you playing time. We're going to give you film. We're going to give you a sales pitch on why you need to remain here and be part of the future. I feel like that Oklahoma State has done a pretty terrible job in orchestrating some of that, getting some of the younger guys to be the core nucleus building blocks moving forward. And again, I understand when you're paying NIL dollar bills, those individuals kind of have to pay. But at some point in time, you got to realize the season is lost. We need to plan for the future. So we need to give hope to the younger guys. And I don't think that we've done a very successful job at that, but only time will tell, right? We'll find out at the end of the season if the Rodney Fields of the world decide to come back or not, if the Gunnar Wilsons of the world or the Ike Essenwoons, if they decide to return to Oklahoma State, then probably behind closed doors, we have done a better job in sales pitching the hope for retention. But visibly, externally, it doesn't appear as though that's the case. We've kind of isolated the younger dudes and promoted some of the NIL dudes, and you're obviously seeing the result.
I've gone out on my channel this week and I've said that I think because this team has a good chance of still making a bowl game, they have to go 2-1 the rest of the way. Kansas State, obviously getting to 6-6, I think would be a lot better than even going 5-7 when it comes to retention, when it comes to NIL, trying to find an identity. I've gone out and said that I think that this rest of the season is going to be kind of an audition for some of these younger players, especially with some of the injuries and key players leaving the program. We'll get to that in just a second. On the other side, how I think there's going to be some fun position battles. And we'll do that right here on this Locked On College crossover between Locked On Kansas State and Locked On Oklahoma State. But first, this episode of Locked On College Crossover is brought to you by Supply House. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. With over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. If you need parts fast on a project, well, guess what? Supply House has next day delivery. Talk about a game changer. And if you join right now, you can join the free Trade Master program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and dedicated support lines. So visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use promo code SHCollege5, all one word, for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. Let's get back in the mix here on this Locked On College crossover, Locked On Kansas State, Locked On Oklahoma State. Cody Stovall, Christian Rao breaking it down. And obviously, this is not the game that's going to be College Game Day. This is not the game that's going to be, an exciting matchup for many people. But the sickos should be really dialed in because this is a sicko game. I mean, at the top of the rankings, in my opinion, Oklahoma State really has a chance to get their first Big 12 win of the season and maybe in the last 2 years, because Kansas State has only won twice in the last 26 years in Stillwater. Take away the Mike Gundy situation, whatever the case may be. Obviously, Oklahoma State's not having the best season. Kansas State's not either. You've only won in Stillwater in 1999 and 2017 over the past 25-something years. Cody Stovall, what is your thoughts about this matchup when it comes to position battles? Who was the biggest player that you're looking at on the Oklahoma State side that could make a huge impact against the Wildcats?
So we were just talking a little bit about retention and giving some viability on the field for guys that you want to maintain. If there's one dude that Oklahoma State has accentuated very, very well in the direction of we need you to stay, it's Wendell Gregory, the outside linebacker, defensive end hybrid, number 4, transfer from South Carolina. He's been a mainstay. He's been really the only individual that consistently all season has lived in the backfield, whether it be tackles for loss or sacks. I know he's top 20 in the Big 12 in sacks. He's top 5 in the Big 12 in tackles for loss. He has kind of been the shining light on the defensive side of the ball. It may be, a little bit of a turd sandwich watching the back end of the Cowboys defense, but he has been the dude that's kind of led the front end in at least keeping 5 of the last 6 opponents under a 100-yard rusher. This previous week, obviously, or the week prior to our bye week, that went out the window. But aside from that, the front 7 has done a pretty good job going from 5.6 yards per carry down to 2.7 yards per carry, allowing defensively. And I think a lot of that is Wendell Gregory. Offensively, you have to account for him, right? So whether it's going to be a chip from a running back or scooting over a motion tight end, and that should open things up for some of the other individuals like Brian McCoy, and then the defensive line has done a much better job. The issue that we're going to have, you're talking about matchup nightmares, is any Kansas State wide receiver running in the back end of the defense is a problem for Oklahoma State. That's been the biggest issue. When Zane Flores plays well, we don't run the ball well. When we run the ball well, the quarterback doesn't play well. When the front 7 absolutely dominates and they can't rush the ball, the back end gets cooked 24/7. But the back end getting cooked is the consistency, right? Every positional group has done things that give you hope, except for the back end of the defense. Individually, Cam Smith's played well. LaDainian Fields has played well. But outside of that, it's been a mess, man. So if you're playing Oklahoma State, the objective should be just to throw the ball a bunch over the top, and you're probably going to complete far too many.
Yeah, it could be a big day for Jace Brown. I mean, so far this season, it feels like there's been a motto. We probably should put it on a t-shirt: Def, Taxes, Big Play Jace. He finds a way to make big plays, but obviously that hasn't been enough for Kansas State to keep themselves in Big 12 contention. I think you have to play, and I think really this is probably my key factor to the game on both sides, well, Oklahoma State and Kansas State. Whoever plays the most complementary football, I think, wins this football game. Whoever can obviously have better field position, who can find themselves playing good on all facets of the football game between offense, defense, special teams. That sounds like maybe the easiest answer to say, but it's definitely true. I mean, there's been blunders on the special team side for Kansas State this year. I know it's happened the same for Oklahoma State. Obviously, defensive secondary issues have been an issue for Oklahoma State. The secondary on Kansas State has much improved, but it was definitely a big concern for the team this season. And then when you look at Kansas State's running back conversation, the offensive line has struggled in the run blocking department all season long. And then you add the elephant in the room of Dylan Edwards leaving the program, redshirting, and obviously not being around, and something that was a huge issue. We're talking off the air how after the Iowa State game, all Kansas State could talk about in the post game and week 0 was how they felt like it was just a big issue that Dylan Edwards wasn't on the field. They couldn't plan without Dylan Edwards. And I feel like that was a major issue and a major identity loss for Kansas State earlier in the season, what ultimately left them out of Big 12 contention when we're getting to this end of the season and you're battling for a bowl game. I'm going to go with that running back room. If I had to pick one position battle to pay attention to, Dylan Edwards hasn't been in the fold for many weeks now, and we know that. But Joe Jackson has had his ups and downs. He has really started to shine and take off, but I want to see him take that next step to prove to Chris Kleiman, to prove to the rest of the coaching staff that he is the running back one of the future, that they don't have to go out and waste is the wrong word, but spend time on focusing on getting more in the running back department. They can focus on other areas that they obviously need to in the one and only transfer portal window in January, Cody. And then, of course, when we're talking about what's going to happen with this transfer portal window, I think you and I are going to be really busy in January talking about players leaving our programs. Yeah. Retention is going to be huge. There's no doubt about that. Kansas State focused on that retention model last year. Can they do it again 2 years in a row, especially with a down season they're having this year? I want to focus on a guy like Lincoln Cure, the #1 Kansas recruit in the program last year. I want to see them really focus and try to give him an identity the last couple games and prove that they have a future for him, so we don't see him go out West Coast to Oregon, something he almost did before he committed to the Wildcats.
Ironically enough, that was actually my next thing. My next two things I wanted to mention was essentially trying to beat K-State at their own game. Our tight ends began the season as an integral part of the offense, and we also had like 8 of them. We only have 3 two real tight ends left, but they have been factored into the offensive game plan a little bit more over the last couple of weeks. So whether it be Grayson Brousseau or the 5th-year senior Quentin Stewart, I would like to see Oklahoma State try to match what Kansas State is going to do with Cure. Cure is a very good tight end. Tight ends have been an Achilles heel of Oklahoma State this season, whether it be Brandon Rawls at outside linebacker or even the Ole Miss transfer Trip White. The quality tight ends in the conference have been problematic. I don't expect that to change against Kansas State. So hopefully we can counteract that with our own tight end play because we haven't seen enough of it. And if your quarterback is looking for safety outlets, it's always going to be the running back or the tight end. And it comes down to who does he trust more. The running back game out of the backfield with Rodney Fields and Sesi Vailahe has been pretty remarkable this season. It's been one of the few offensive bright spots. But I would like to see that safety valve open up a little bit more and get the tight ends more involved. Lastly, another position battle I think we should pay attention to is special teams. The only returning coach on Oklahoma State's roster from last season is Sean Snyder. But Oklahoma State hasn't exactly been killing it in the special teams department. Wes Paul has pretty good numbers, but that's because he's punting all the flipping time. And even to some degree, when you look at the kicking, it's pretty much the same, right? Mm-hmm. And it's not always because of talent. It's because they're just kicking. We're kicking more than everybody else in the Big 12. Therefore, some of those numbers are a little bit skewed. So where I'd like to pay attention to is the return yards. Oklahoma State doesn't have very many. Kansas State does. That seems to be problematic. If Sean Snyder can stop K-State from winning the field position battle and we can utilize the tight end more, that might give us the ability to control the clock enough to get an ugly, dirty, nasty, old school kind of W.
Could you imagine if the way that Oklahoma State upset Kansas State and Stillwater was become a special teams because of Sean Snyder? Could you imagine?
That would be fantastic. Give me a blocked field goal for a 1-point W and Sean Snyder get hoisted on somebody's shoulders. I will take that all day, every day.
I don't like it, but it can happen. Definitely can happen for sure. Hey, before we go to the break here, I threw out Lincoln Cure as my guy, my #1 guy who I really think needs to be like the key indicator for retention this year for Kansas State. If you keep Lincoln Cure, I think you can find a good identity and really keep some other players for the future of Kansas State. Is there one guy, because obviously we know we're going to be busy in January, is there one guy for Oklahoma State that speaks that for you?
I mean, I go back and forth. There's 2. Rodney Fields Jr., the running back from Oklahoma, and Wendell Gregory for 2 different reasons. Wendell Gregory, obviously, I do think is that Ollie Gordon kind of guy on this football team. But I think the biggest benefit of Rodney Fields is he came with family members. So if you keep Rodney Fields Jr., then you probably keep LaDainian Fields. You probably keep Deshaun Brown. And that kind of adds a different layer to me. So it's 1A, 1B.
Okay. All right. Well, plenty to look and watch on this game on Saturday between Oklahoma State and Kansas State, and more for the future as well with this program, because somehow they always find a way to intertwine with themselves, and it's not just because they're in the Big 12 conference. I got a fun stat that talks about last year's game and how it could tie into the future of Oklahoma State's program. We'll do that on the other side right here on this Locked On College crossover.
It is FanDuel out here. Basketball season has arrived. It gives us something to get excited about when football season is a little bit downtrodden. And ladies and gentlemen, you know you cannot go wrong with FanDuel, the bee's knees for all of your betting needs. Whether it's Cade Cunningham about to cut down the nets or you're going to rock with the Oklahoma City Thunder, perhaps there's going to be a Kansas Stater out here to make something magical happen. That is going to give you the ample opportunity that you need to capitalize on your betting season this year. So make sure that you get squared away today with FanDuel, the bee's knees of all of your betting needs. If you want to ride the hot hand or just bet on the guy who's going to lead the fourth quarter comeback, FanDuel allows you to do all of that, especially when your team's making the late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 back in bonus bets when your first $5 bet is a winner. Head on over to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
All right, Cody Stovall of Lockdown Oklahoma State, Christian Rao of Lockdown Kansas State. Thank you for making either one of us your first listen today. Now part of the #1 sports podcast network, Lockdown Podcast Network. Really appreciate that. I got a fun stat for you to round out this show, and I think it's going to turn into a fun conversation here. Last year against Oklahoma State, Avery Johnson, quarterback of Kansas State, of course, threw for 259 yards, 3 touchdowns. He also rushed for 60 yards and 2 touchdowns. It was a really good game for Avery Johnson last year. He became the first K-State quarterback to throw 3 touchdowns and rush for 2 touchdowns in a Big 12 conference game since 2012. And who was that quarterback in 2012? Well, that was good old Colin Klein. The reason I bring up Colin Klein is because there's rumors swirling about potentially who will take over the Oklahoma State job, and his name continues to appear. Now, if you look at my comments on Lockdown Kansas State, there is a good majority of people, I should say. There is a group, there is a clique of people who want to see us move on from our coaching and move into a different type of future of Kansas State. That's what happens after one down year in a program that relies on success, and they want to go with the old hand of Colin Klein, the former quarterback who's now the current offensive coordinator at Texas A&M and doing a really good job at that right now. What are you hearing from the Oklahoma State coaching search, and is Colin Klein a front runner for the Cowboys?
Well, evidently, I jumped the gun there a little bit. Evidently, I got my years wrong, too. If Colin Klein was 2012, the 2017 dub was who? Skylar Thompson?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
Okay. Yes, Colin Klein does factor into this equation, certainly because of his connection to the Big 12, recruiting geographically, success at Texas A&M. It makes a ton of sense. However, I don't know that you want to go with an unproven methodology with this new coaching because, as you just previously mentioned, Chris Kleiman has done a remarkable job. Chris Kleiman is pretty much the carbon copy of the Bill Snyder system, which is precisely what has made Kansas State what they are, right? Oklahoma State has a lot of familiarity there. But at the same point in time, this is the world that we live in, right? It's if you're not playing in like 2.5 years, you're probably going to another school, or that school's probably saying, hey, you should probably look elsewhere. In coaching nowadays, if you're not winning in 2 to 3 years, you probably are out of a job. And this is an unintended consequence of the NIL transfer portal era. And, you know, I don't love it, right? I don't like the direction that college football is going. And I don't like it for this particular reason. Chris Kleiman should not be in jeopardy until Chris Kleiman crosses that Mike Gundy bridge. When you start going 3-9, 1-11, that kind of thing, then I think it does make sense. I don't think that it makes sense for Kansas State to have this conversation now. But unfortunately, if you look across the country, the trend right now is to fire coaches for underperforming. Really? It doesn't even matter if they're 1 year, second year, third year, 21st year anymore. If you're severely underperforming and enough donors want you out, you're out. I mean, point blank, period.
I think Brian Kelly of LSU is a perfect example of that one, where he lost to all ranked teams. I mean, of course, obviously, you know, underperforming at that SEC level. If you want to say it means more, go ahead, say whatever you want to say. But like, that's a wild decision to make. And then if you're trying to put yourself in the same category, Chris Kleiman, who has got them to 8 or 9 wins almost every single year since being the head coach of Kansas State, with the exception of that COVID year. Now, this is going to be their worst year since that COVID year. I don't think you immediately have to start pushing directions. And of course, I think there's a little bit of a down spar right now between Kansas State. The basketball program's not making the big dance the last couple of years. Obviously, you haven't made the Big 12 tournament, Big 12 championship game in football since 2022. But I don't think you have to say that Chris Kleiman lost his touch. I do think there might need to be some coaching changes, but I don't think at the very top. That's where I'm sitting.
No, I completely agree with you, but this is the world that we live in now. The benefit that I think that you guys do have is no matter where Colin Klein goes, I do believe that Colin Klein will like to coach at Kansas State. So that might be one of the reasons why he's not a great fit at Oklahoma State or anywhere else for that matter, because if it continues this way, if Chris Kleiman does this again next year, then you do have to have the conversation about him not having a job just because of the landscape that we live in. Not that it should happen, right? But it will happen. If Chris Kleiman has back-to-back bad seasons, there's going to be a clamoring, and that clamoring is always going to be for a Colin Klein. And I think that's where there's reservation for us, because if we get Colin Klein and he is successful, we know that there's a high likelihood that the millisecond Chris Kleiman's gone, so is Colin Klein. It doesn't matter where he's at. So I think that there's a little bit of trepidation in regards to him. And it's the same reservations people have about Zach Robinson, right? He's our version of Colin Klein, but he hasn't coached in college. So that fear of the unknown is always going to have some donors that are slightly reluctant to pull the trigger.
You and I are both veterans. Happy belated Veterans Day, by the way. I think we both can talk about this. Obviously, the government shutdown that's happening right now, you're probably going to have some delayed mail right now. So it's about a month out before Christmas. Have you got your Christmas list ready to send out to the North Pole? And who's that number one on your wish list for Oklahoma State's head coach? Who are you putting on that number one list, the good old jolly old St. Nick?
I'm kind of buying into the Eric Morris hype, buddy.
Okay.
I really am. Another one of those individuals that has Big 12 ties, right? Texas Tech wide receiver during the Mike Leach era days. So he has that kind of Dana Holgorsen style of offensive system. He's
quarterback whisperer.
That's what I was about to get to. He's been remarkable with quarterbacks, whether it be Cam Ward or John Mateer or what he's doing right now with Matemaker. It's been pretty impressive. He understands geographically how to recruit the area. I don't think we have a ton of concerns about Joey McGuire getting outed at Texas Tech anytime soon. So I do feel like that if you go get an Eric Morris, it's a safer bet than a Colin Klein because of the instability potentially with Kansas State fans and Chris Kleiman at the moment.
I don't hate that, actually. I think that'd be a really good fit for Oklahoma State. And if that happened, I think watch out for Oklahoma State in the couple of years coming, because everywhere he goes, he finds ways to win. I mean, North Texas, a few years ago, no one had them on the map. And now they're, 8-1 and potentially going to be in the college football playoffs because he brought in a quarterback that no one ever recruited. I mean, that's impressive stuff that he's doing.
Well, not only that, just think about that. So he recruited Cam Ward because Cam Ward ran a triple option style of attack. So Cam Ward never got to throw the ball in high school, so he didn't get recruited. But obviously Eric Morris was like, that kid can throw. People just don't realize it yet, right? He did the same thing. That Matemaker dude, he didn't even play in high school. He was a backup all throughout high school. Yet somehow Eric Morris saw him in 7-on-7 and camps, and he identified something that nobody else could see. And that's kind of what we need, right? You're going to be able to get wide receivers and running backs and linebackers to Oklahoma State. Getting that top-tier quarterback has been very hit and miss for us. So if you bring somebody that already knows how to do that has a young quarterback, because Matemaker's only a redshirt freshman. Yeah. So he's got at least 3 years left. And I think nowadays, and I covered this recently, it's less important about the coaching talent, right, individually. Now it's about what kind of roster can you bring with you. Willie Fritz brought a roster with him to Houston. John Summerall, when he got upgraded, he brought a roster with him. Alex Golesh, when he got the UCF job, he took a roster with him. Matt Rule, when he got the Baylor job, he took a bunch of Temple dudes with him. There is a categorization that is now more applicable than ever, that it's not necessarily about the coach, it's about what can he bring with him.
I love that. Man, you just got me sold and got me off the ledge of maybe Colin Klein not being the head coach of Oklahoma State. Cody Stovall of Locked On Oklahoma State right here with Christian Rao of Locked On Kansas State. Thanks for joining this Locked On College crossover. For the record, let's make sure we clear the air. It was Skylar Thompson last time they won in Stillwater, 45-40. And for the record, that was the 6th win of Kansas State's season. Now, Kansas State can't get win number 6, but they obviously can get win number 5 and put them in good position to get to a bowl game at the end of the season. Cody, where can everyone find you at Locked On Oklahoma State and what you got coming up?
But that's it, man. I am going to talk a little bit about a potential coaching name that hasn't really been talked about a lot that will surprise a lot of people out there. I do think that it's probably too big of a swing at the moment, but I would admit that if we did pull it off, it would send a lot of earthquakes throughout the country.
I'm just going to say it now. I don't think Nick Saban's coming to Stillwater. Cody, thank you so much. Thanks so much for listening, folks. We'll see you back here with another episode. Please like the video. Please subscribe. We'll see you back here next time on a Locked On College crossover of Locked On Kansas State and Locked On Oklahoma State.